Well, happy Friday again. I don't really think Friday means anything to anybody anymore. Most of us work all weekend and the days all just run together. But here we are, and today we have Popcorn Blais with us. Show them your muscles.
Because I'm a popcorn.
Because you're a popcorn. Muscles, is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. What happens when you pop though? You probably get like big muscles, right? Like pop. Yeah, okay. So today we are going to make chewy caramels. That's why our friend Popcorn here, because everybody loves caramel popcorn. This is not the right type of caramel to make caramel popcorn, but we can talk about that in a little bit. All right, Popcorn Blais, why don't you open us up with our joke?
The baby corn said to its mom.
The baby corn, what did it say to its mom? I don't know.
Where is popcorn?
Popcorn like a dad? Oh, okay. So.
Or a grandpa.
Or a grandpa, yeah. Okay, so we have our recipe. Hopefully everybody's seen it. In this pot, I have corn syrup and I have sugar. And I have gone ahead and made sure that it is completely saturated. That way I don't have any crystalline sugar left. It's all liquid. In these containers, I have my half and half. So this is a cup and a half of half and half, and this is a cup and a half of half and half. For those of you who don't know, half and half is half whole milk, half heavy cream. That's it. All right, so we also have in here a little already, and we have a little bit of vanilla, but of course you could change that up as you need to. You could totally...
looks like there's something coming in.
Blais.
Nope.
You could totally use alcohol. You could use any kind of other extracts. You could use any type of other dried seasonings. If you add large pieces of particulates, like if you were going to use whole chili peppers or whole chipotles, those will cook very differently because they're going to be candied in the caramel. I think a chipotle caramel is delicious. A lot of people don't, but you need to watch out for who you may be serving. The seeds get exponentially hotter once they've been cooked yet again. So, here we go. We're going to turn this on. In the pot, I have my sugar and I have my corn syrup, which is obviously just a type of sugar. We will cook it to 234 degrees Fahrenheit. You definitely want to have a candy thermometer for this. You can use one of these old-fashioned guys like I have. You can use a deep fry thermometer if you have one of those. It's totally fine. Just try and make sure there's no oil on it. It'll change the way the sugar cooks. You can use one of the ones that has an electric probe with an alarm. I use those a lot in professional kitchens. That way I can do other things and it will alarm me when it gets to the right temperature. Now, a word of caution with the electronic ones is if they are down here, this is an induction burner, it works on magnetism. If they are at the same level as the unit, the magnetic wave off what it reads, so you need to make sure that it is above the magnetic wave. The drawback to this glass guy is it steams up, it gets foggy from all the steam that comes out, and you may be wondering, why do I have such a tall pot? When you make caramel, it's very wise to have a taller pot than you think you need, because when we add our dairy to it, it's going to bubble up very vigorously, and if it boils out of the pan, it makes a huge, very dangerous mess, because it is super hot, basically magma sugar, and we don't want it to get on us. So use a much taller pot than you think you need, and you'll be very well served. We let it do its thing. We don't need to agitate it at all. I may, from time to time, rotate the pan just to make sure there's no imbalances in its cooking, and then you always need to make sure you can put your candy thermometer where you can see it. So, come up here, Popcorn Blais, you're fine. Stand up, please, bud. Now, we're using corn syrup. I have definitely succeeded with molasses. It's a very acquired taste. You can do it with honey, you can do it with maple sugar, but as long as we're in something like that, it all works more or less the same. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
How does it come from that to a chewy caramel?
Well, you're going to watch it happen right now. We're making it. So, once my temperature gets up to 234 degrees Fahrenheit, I will add half of my total volume of half and half, and then I will bring it back up to that temperature again. Now I know some of you are probably like, well, why can't I just cook it up, add it all, and then cook it to 250 to 251-ish degrees Fahrenheit and save myself that middle step? Part of the chewy caramel flavor and part of its substance comes from caramelizing the sugars that are in the dairy. So it's a big important step. So we're at the right temperature, right? I will hold on to the side, gently add this. You should see a lot of steam coming out of here.
Whoa.
And this, Yep, and this was room temperature. If you add anything cold, it has a likelihood to seize the sugar that's cooking because of the massive temperature difference. So it's always a good idea where you can to have it at least room temperature. If you have the space, like you're doing this on your stove, you can have this on one burner on high, and you can have these on other burners on kind of medium. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
What does seize mean?
Seize, well, when we're talking about sugar, it means that it hardens up super, super fast. Right? And this is supposed to be liquid because we need it to boil. So if it turns into a solid, we have to spend a lot of time turning it back into a liquid. So it works against us. Does that make sense? Awesome. Good question, Popcorn Blais. We went from 234 degrees Fahrenheit. When I added my room temperature liquid, it dropped immediately to down around 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So it needs to boil again to 234. And what that does is it does the sugars, but it also starts evaporating out the water that we need. Water is obviously what makes liquid. Since we started with liquid sugars, the crystal has liquid in it. We added a whole bunch of liquid here. We need to get it out. Now, what you may not see is that in the pot, it's already boiling up to here with the milk. So again, make sure that you have a much taller pot than you think you need. But it goes pretty quickly. If you have an induction burner, of course, cook on whatever temperature you're comfortable at. If it starts getting way too close to the top for your comfort level, you can of course drop the heat. You can drop the temperature that it's cooked at. It will still achieve that temperature, and it will just take longer to do. When we're talking about candy cookery, a lot of times what we're doing is we're trying to get that specific temperature because that's how we know we've gotten the moisture out for it to be the right consistency. This is where a lot of people fight themselves with divinity, probably the most notoriously fickle of all candies, is that even when they cook it to the right temperature, there's still so much free moisture in there that it becomes a problem for them. Does that make sense? So much, isn't it? Candy.
I'm just watching out just in case you're telling them and you don't notice.
Oh, thanks, bud. It's always good to have an extra set of popcorn doing for me. What you can't see because it's such a tall pot is all of my dairy and sugar is starting to take on a pale yellow color. It's what we call amber, right? And that helps me know that we're entering the later sugar cookery. We're going to start getting closer and closer to the caramel stage. Now, as this is cooking, we need to start looking down the road because once this is ready, we're going to need to cast it. And when I say cast it, it means it needs to go into a prepared vessel or shape, and then it needs to set fully. Just wait, please. That's for me. Thank you. Now, here I have a metal ring on top of a silicone mat on top of a cutting board. It's the easiest, most heat-safe way to do it. The cutting board will absorb all the heat. It's very, very nice. Plus, cutting boards are usually much more flat than your baking trays are. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
I was gonna say the thing after that.
Okay, go for it.
Shout out.
Shout out fans. Okay. So, if you have a metal ring like I do, right? This is what's called a mousse ring. This is actually how I make all of my cakes. This is how I do pies and tarts very quickly, is I can just punch them out and I can do all that stuff. It makes it so much easier. I almost never use tube pans anymore because they take up a lot of space. I can stack all these right inside each other. It's one of those things that we do to turbo or speed our production. But if you have a metal ring, it needs a light coating of spray. Of course, you can rub oil on it if you would like. Alternatively, you can use a silicone mold. Now, make sure that you have the right size silicone mold. Nobody needs a full mouthful of chewy caramel, so we try to keep it fairly small. And this technically doesn't need to be sprayed, but it's a lot easier if it is sprayed. Just a really light coating.
Just like the silicone.
Just like the silicone, that's right. Now, at this point, I can smell it. I can smell that the sugar is really starting to caramelize and take on its next steps. It's getting kind of a cafe au lait color. We're getting close to the second 234 degree mark. It's really important not to miss the middle 234 degree mark. If it gets too hot when we add the dairy, it's likely to get much, much too dark in the end. Likewise, if you add your dairy too early, you interrupted the sugar crystals too early. You can cook it longer, but it ends up being much longer in the end. So, now we're ready. Of course, the most popular chewy caramel these days is sprinkled with sea salt. We will handle that at the end. We don't need to add a ton to this because, quite frankly, it cooks and there's so much sugar and so much milk and so much going on that it's a lot easier to add it on the final product, almost like topping of bread. What's up, Popcorn Blais?
I forgot to look on.
Still looking? Okay. Now, if you don't have a metal ring and a silicone mat and a cutting board, or you don't have silicone molds at all, of course you can still make chewy caramels. What I would recommend is you can use parchment or you can use tin foil, put it in a pan, still lightly spray it. It helps release the sugars. The goal here is that the sugar doesn't have anything to grab onto except itself. It will shrink just a little bit as it sets, so as it cools down, it'll pop right off there, and that's why we want the oil. If you don't have that, you might think, oh, I'll use wax paper. Wax paper is so light that it will suck up with the caramel and it'll change the way it's shaped. It becomes a problem. We can wrap it once we have a full chewy caramel at the end in wax paper, but for casting it, we like something with a lot more rigidity. It's a big word, huh? Now, in professional candy operations, there are things called candy bars, and it's not like the candy bar you eat, but they're giant metal bars that we can set down, and they just run into each other. They're dense metal, they're stainless steel and aluminum typically. We gently spray those, and then we can adjust them as we go until we get the exact size we want. Super, super handy, so if you have something similar to that, you can of course use that. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
What was that word that you said that started with a R?
I don't even know.
It's something like refrigerate.
Refrigerate? Oh, rigidity? I don't know, bud. But, you think about it. But as we're looking at our sugar, what's in the pot, I told you it was here earlier. It's taking on a much more caramel color and it starts sinking down in the pot. Again, that's all the water coming out of it. Now, there's a lot of things that you can look at with sugar cookery that give you some good indicators just in case your thermometer isn't the best, right? I've had this thermometer for a long time. I trust it, but I've had plenty of electronic thermometers that some days I'm like, I don't know if that's reading accurate. So if you have a lot of really fine bubbles, hold on. If you have a lot of really small bubbles and a ton of steam and they're popping really fast, basically like boiling water, then that means that it's almost all liquid. You're getting the liquid out of there. As we start seeing more and more sugar, we're gonna have big bubbles that pop real slow, almost like tar bubbles on cartoons, right? It's because it has a lot of sugar matrix and it's popping very, very slow. Right now, we're at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a good mixture of both, but you can see it's a bit of a process. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
Can I go eat some crackers for a little bit?
Sure, go eat some crackers for a little bit.
Yeah.
Popcorn Blais is not interested in watching sugar cook, but it's important to keep your eyes on it.
Yay, crackers.
Yay, crackers. So the question is, do we need to stir it? The answer is definitely no. We almost never stir caramels, or really many candies, because if you think about fudge, right? And this will kind of paint the picture for all of it, I hope. Fudge we stir at the end because we're trying to crystallize the sugar very, very rapidly. We're creating a chain reaction where we bump the sugar crystals together, they link up, and it causes this massive chain reaction that forces all the other sugars to align according to that. If I start stirring this, even though it's still really hot, I might force early crystallization, so we leave it alone to let it do its thing. Now, like I said, I may periodically kind of rotate my pan just to make sure it's cooking evenly, but we don't need to stir what's inside. This, again, also is where I might recommend not making something with a lot of particulates. I don't throw whole vanilla beans or anything like that in there. Hey, Popcorn Blais, why don't you come back up here, buddy? Popcorn Blais has a lot of energy. It's his birthday week, and we have been navigating that, and it's going something. I'm not going to say well, but it's going something. Now, what I may do is from time to time, I may put my thermometer in the middle of the boiling mixture, because that's where it is theoretically the hottest, just to see how much closer it may be than it is on the outside. Something also to keep in mind, if you have your thermometer against the bottom of the pot, it's very likely that it's reading the metal temperature, not the sugar temperature. You'll still be close, but it may not be the most accurate. Will it matter in the end? Kind of, because what will happen is it may not be as hot as you thought, thus it won't be as firm, and it may be super liquidy and much more gooey. Our temp right now, we're getting very close to 232 degrees, so we'll give it another couple seconds and we'll probably add our next mixture of dairy. Now again, I told you this is already room temperature. If it was cold and the first one bubbled up a lot, what I would recommend doing is if you don't have a pot, or like I clearly don't have multiple induction burners, throw this in the microwave, microwave it until it is hot. You can even boil it just a little bit if you want to, You can pour it in there, and not only will it keep it from boiling up so vigorously, it'll speed up the cooking process for the next and final stage. All right, 234. So here we go. Goes right in.
Whoa.
Yeah, you can hear it sizzling as it hits the bottom, huh? Now when I pour it in, I'm not going to stir, but I am going to kind of swish it around just to make sure, and then we let it do its thing. Now this is the cooking stage that's going to take the longest. We go all the way up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Now you can go slightly higher if you're worried about it being firmer, but what we don't want to do is take it so high that it basically turns into taffy. Now that might sound delicious, but it's really weird when it's caramel. So when we look at it, it's just boiling nice and slow. We have the color in there. You can see it's got that amber color. We only went to 234. As we get all the way up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll take on a much more caramel flavor. We're trying to caramelize the sugars from our sugar. We're trying to caramelize the sugars from our dairy. And of course, we're trying to make sure that we have the right water concentration to where it's actually a chewy caramel, not a hard caramel, and not something that's barely above a sauce. What's up, Popcorn Blais? You just waving at everybody? Good job, dude.
And smiling.
And smiling. It's important. Okay, calm down. So, the question is, what is my favorite thermometer for candy? Honestly, it's the one that works. And the reason I transitioned, I used to use electronic thermometers exclusively for a long time because they had, like I said, probes that were, I could dump in the pot and I could put it up here and I could read it from across the kitchen, or I could set an alarm on it and it would beep at me, and I love those, and I still do love them, but I found that they broke so easily. The probes would get bent, or the wires would get frayed, and then I was like, I just didn't trust that it was the most accurate. So I went back to these cheap guys that I just buy at the grocery store. I think this one was...
It's bubbling up again, and
sure,
it's going higher.
It is going higher. So I buy like the $6 ones at the grocery store. If you find one you love, keep it. Obviously the glass ones have a big risk of breaking. Like I said, you can definitely use a deep fry thermometer. You just want one that goes high enough that you can register the cooking temperatures. 250 degrees Fahrenheit is not very hot, but there are many of other applications where we go up into the 300s, and we want to make sure that we can register all of those temperatures accurately. Alright, so what Popcorn Blais was saying is, oh, it's bubbling up a lot. Like right here, we're about here in the pot. Tons of bubbles, lots of steam, very, very fine, so I know it's mostly liquid that we're boiling out. My temperature...
It's going up to there again.
It is going up to there again. Steam goes all the way up to the clouds, bud. Isn't that crazy? We're making our own little caramel clouds in the house. Isn't that cool? Okay, so we're getting very close to 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and we just let it cook until we get to 250. You can even take it as far as like 252, 253, and I know it may sound like, oh, 1 degree isn't that big of a deal, but it is. If you want them to set a little firmer. The best piece of advice I could say is make like a half recipe at 250, see how it sets in your house, that way you can measure your thermometer. Maybe your dairy has a higher fat content than you expected. These are all kind of the finer points, and then the next time you can cook it a couple degrees hotter and you'll get a firmer caramel. What's up, Popcorn Blais? Yeah, I got it. Now, while this is cooking, a message from me, Joe the Baker, to you guys. Tomorrow's going to be my last Cabo Farmers Market for a while. There's absolutely nothing going on at the farmers market. It's still there. It's still operating. I'm still a big part of it. I love everybody there. It's just, it's so much going on at once. And it's so much easier for me just to hand stuff to you guys out of my house, which is 4 minutes from the farmer's market, that honestly, I'm just being kind of lazy. It's a lot of work to get everything up there into a field on Saturdays when I could just be here and deal with it that way. So, love the farmer's market, fully support it. I will be there tomorrow, but it will be my last one for a little while. Yes, Popcorn Blais.
There's a little puppy birdie over there.
There is a puffy birdie over there. It's a good thing someone's watching this caramel, huh, dude? So the question is, how hot is my burner? It's at max. My burner is at max temperature, so ultra hot, fast, high. It still takes a while. There's a lot of moisture to cook out of here. We need to cook the moisture out so we can get the caramelization on the sugars, so we get that beautiful caramel flavor in the end. You could technically make this with a lower amount of liquid. It would cook faster, but then it wouldn't have that caramelized flavor that we love. I'm sure there are hundreds of recipes for chewy caramels out there. I know that I've read some that are like 7-minute microwave caramels. I don't doubt that they work. It's just this is how I've always done it, so I stick with it. I know it. Are you doing popcorn yoga?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just I'm trying to popcorn back.
You're trying to popcorn balance? Okay. The color in here, we're over the cafe au lait color. We're getting into the very light caramel, and we're just watching it cook. So this is the really exhilarating part of it all. In a commercial kitchen, there's not a chance in the world I would just be standing here watching it, but I also wouldn't get too far away from it, right? So I would have this where I can see it. I would probably have an electronic thermometer with an alarm, or I would have this and I would just be working right next to it. But you can definitely kind of know that you're in for another 5 to 10 minutes of cooking, perhaps. What color do you say that is, Popcorn Blais?
Kind of brownish yellow.
Kind of brownish yellow, yeah. Does it look good? Does it smell good?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you think? It smells delicious, huh? Now, if you want to take your chewy caramels in a very different direction, but you don't want to add the particulates, like we've talked about with other things throughout this series, the dairy can be infused with other flavors. So let's say I wanted that chipotle flavor, but I didn't want to have any seeds or giant pieces of chilies in there. Of course, I can infuse my cream with the chipotles. I could do that cold, I could do it hot. If you're going to do it cold, I would say just throw some chipotles in there in your half and half mixture, leave it in the fridge overnight. Or of course you could heat up your cream and milk mixture with some chipotles, let that steep for a while, and then just pull it out. You'll still get that chipotle flavor, but it won't be nearly as aggressive for anybody who's very sensitive to spicy flavors. Some of my favorite caramel combinations, I love coconut caramels. You could use coconut milk for this, but a lot of times I avoid it because it doesn't have enough flavor. I like to have the shredded coconut flavor, toasted coconut flavor, and of course, you know, coconut extract, which basically tastes like sunscreen lotion. I love black pepper caramels, bacon caramels, all that stuff. Of course, with the bacon, I would throw it right in there. I would mix that up, and it would be delicious. What are you staring at there, Popcorn Blais?
The robot.
Oh, you're looking at Alexa? Yeah, now she's gonna start doing something weird, I can already tell. All right, so are there any questions out there while we wait for this? Because all we're doing is waiting for it to get to the right temperature. Yeah, I got you, bud. So, starting next week, because school is officially canceled for the rest of the year, which is great. In my personal opinion, hopefully they just cancel classes and call it done, because it's kind of a lot. But school is out. Next week we will transition to 2 shows a week. I know that you guys are super excited. We're doing less and less. And, tell them, Blais, read the last one.
Till the end of May, I will be...
No, there's just the last line where it says Blais.
Blais? I will be the chef next Thursday.
Oh my goodness, Blais is going to be the chef next Thursday. Oh no, so does that mean I have to wear a costume?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I'm a costume kind of guy.
Well, you got that bunny costume.
Maybe. So what are we going to make next Thursday, Blais?
Next Thursday we are gonna either make apple mouths or ice cream in a bag.
Keep your costume on. You want to make ice cream in a bag? You know what's crazy? I've never made ice cream in a bag.
Well, I made it at school.
So you're going to teach me something. That's cool. What kind of ice cream do you think we're going to make?
I guess just vanilla.
Just vanilla? You know, it's the finest of the flavors. You're too young. Doesn't matter. Alright, so we're just watching this cook. We are right at 225 degrees. I think what we're going to do is we're going to send you guys on your way, and I will just post a video of casting it when it is ready to go. Otherwise, we're just going to stand here staring at each other for 10 to 15 minutes. Does that sound fun? No, we see each other enough. Alright, so I'll give it...
That would be only 5 minutes.
Maybe. I will give it 1 more minute for any questions to come in, and then what we'll do is we'll cut the video and we will film a standard video, which I'll put in the comments when it comes to temp. I cast it, and then we can talk about cutting it and storing it. So, what do you want to talk about for 1 minute, Popcorn Blais?
What do we need to use that ring thing for?
Well, this is what we're going to pour the caramel in. The ring is what's going to hold our caramel, because otherwise I would pour it and it would run everywhere, which would be no fun. Okay. I'm glad that you agree with me on that. Alright. No questions? Thank you guys so much. Happy Friday. Check back like around 4. We should have the caramels done and cast and the video in the comments. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye! Alright, so we are there, 250. I added a little bit of bacon bits to it because I thought it would be delicious, right? You like bacon? Okay. So we will carefully remove our thermometer, right? If you could, put that in water right away. It'll save you so much time cleaning it. Otherwise, put it in a container to put water in it later. When it comes to this, turn off the heat. Give it a second for all that extra moisture to dissipate. That way we don't pour it on ourselves. Quick stir, and then it really is, you're okay, popcorn. Really is as simple as just casting it.
That is.
Yeah, it is hot, but it smells super delicious. It smells like really tasty caramel. Now your pan is gonna be super dirty and super sticky and also crazy hot. What I'd recommend doing is letting it cool for a couple minutes and then fill it with hot water. Usually what we do is we just boil it back out to clean it, because if you try to scrub it, it's gonna be a disaster. But what's up, Popcorn Blais?
To me, it kind of smells like s'more pop tart.
Okay, it does smell like very hot sugar, yes. You'll see the metal ring isn't airtight at all, but because we cooked this to a full candy, it's got a good viscosity to it that it's not going to run out of anything. But if I didn't have the ring at all, it would keep flowing. So the ring's going to hold it in place while it cools down. Now, if you're one of these people where you want something on top, you want black pepper, flaked sea salt, bits of bacon, whatever else, at this stage
Or
it's
chocolate chips.
not chocolate chips. Anything that doesn't melt, we can add to it right now. If you put chocolate chips in it, the chocolate chips will melt and it will create this really weird pseudo in between. But it does taste good, it's just not gonna be the most beautiful thing in the world. So, that is Chewy caramels. How do we know when it's ready to move on? It'll be firm, right? This just came out. I have extremely hot, like heat tempered hands, so I'm just gonna feel it real fast, right? It's already got kind of a bubbly skin on it. It's still, I'm guessing, in the 3 or like in the 200 degree range. Like it's hot, but it's not so hot, but it'll cool down faster than you might think. So the best thing to do is touch it when you think it's ready, remove the ring and or like peek at it a little bit. If it starts flowing too fast, just put the ring back and hold it in place until it cools down further. Or of course you can always chill this in the fridge if you needed to. We typically let it cool down at room temperature. That way it cools down nice and slow. It's much more even than if we rush it, it could go so fast that it cracks. Then we come through and we cut it. You may need to oil up your knife. That way it's that much easier. It's more of a pinching motion than it is like a cutting motion. We're kind of pinching it with our knife. And then we typically wrap them in wax paper or like a candy wrapper that'll keep its shape as best it can. Of course, you can store them chilled if you want them to be the perfect shape forever and ever and ever. You can chill them, and then when they go in someone's mouth, they'll heat up very quickly and get that chewy texture back. If you find that they are still just way too soft on your first attempt, cook it slightly hotter next time, like a higher temperature. Yes, Popcorn Blais?
What are we using the chewy caramel for?
Well, we're using it for this video, and then we will eat them. That's exciting, huh?
Yeah?
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't get stuck to my teeth.
It should not get stuck to your teeth, but that is an excellent point. If it does get stuck to your teeth, you probably cooked it too hot to where it has turned into a full-blown hot, hard candy. But even in the last couple minutes I've talked, yeah, it's already setting up pretty quickly. Right now it has the texture of about a marshmallow, and it will continue to get firmer and firmer as it cools down. Since it is on this silicone mat on a cutting board that has a huge surface area, I can periodically just move it around and it will have a new space for that heat to go through. Like if you feel the cutting board, feel it, bud. Isn't that crazy how warm it is? It's not hot, but it's warm, right? But over here it's cold, so we can keep moving it to a cold space and it will cool down that much faster. But that is your chewy caramels. Bye, guys.